why it's become slow. Is it because of that?
We have not seen this command, right, Samir?
No, you haven't seen it. We haven't gone too deep into Terraform yet, right? So the only command that I'm expecting you to know in Terraform is Terraform init, Terraform plan, and Terraform
apply,
and Terraform destroy.
Destroy.
So let me. Let's give it some time to create this infrastructure. And while the infrastructure is being created, we can talk about a few fundamental things. So first rush to, what's wrong? Let me see if I can. Nginx is a server. Okay, I mean, I didn't mention it because we didn't need to. We're going to look at several servers. We're going to look at Nginx. We're going to look at JBoss. We're going to look at Tomcat. So these are all going to be servers. Docker official image. I'm going to go here, and there's a lot of nice things out over here. So we'll play around a bit with it. Okay. The basic command they have given over here. There's one very special thing that you should notice you haven't probably done as part of the exercise is this thing over here. Right? We have seen -d to run as a daemon, and that's the name of the image. So let's see if this guy is ready. Yeah, he's ready. The public IP is over here.
This is how I tried, Samir, host volume.
Okay, awesome. And it worked, right?
Yeah, it worked.
Sure. SSH EC2 user at paste. It's done. Just bear with me. System just restarted, right? So it's trying to do.
Instead of putty, you're SSHing from this.
Yeah. So I think I'll have to get into the system. AWS management console. Look, it's everything become very slow. Oh man.
When are you required to log in as a root user, Samir, in AWS?
You don't need to ever log in as a root user except when you want to. Well, I mean, we have given a full admin access to IAM admin. So that guy can do everything technically. Except when you want to do destructive changes, like you want to delete the whole account or whatever, right? is when you might need a root account. But yeah, I mean, right now I logged in as a root account. What I want to do is I cleaned up everything, so my security group probably doesn't have SSH enabled. It has it enabled, so what's wrong? Right. Was it just not ready? Yeah, it was just not ready when I tried last. I was thinking what went wrong. Okay, so we are inside here. And I believe Docker should already be there. Docker image ls. Yeah, it's there. Let's go back now here. And over here, let's just try to unassemble or deconstruct what's in here. So Docker run command, we know it's a Docker container run command, technically, right? And we are giving a name. So let's start very simple. Let's do Docker. You can do a container run or run. Anything should work, okay? If you don't want to write container, you can just write run. And if I say nginx, we saw last time, what happens is the process starts running over here. So now then we'll have to open a new window so let me show you. So it is fetching the image because it's not there, and it'll start the process inline. See, it can start the process inline. So if I have to do anything, I have to log into a new terminal and try to work with it. So I don't want to do that. So the next nice thing that I usually like to do is add a -d so that it runs as a container in the background. If I have to see what containers are running, I can either do Docker PS, which is a smaller version and an older command, or you can say Docker container list. It will show you that this container is running. Okay. And notice one thing, it gives a pretty fancy random name. Okay. So what I will do is I will start again another instance, and I do a container ls. They have two different names. And why am I doing this? I'm doing this to come to the question which Saujanya was asking about ports, right? What you should see here is every container that is running inside here is a machine. You remember we talked about hypervisor and multiple VMs that you can create. So each one is a machine. And by the virtue of a machine, a machine can not have two processes running on the same port. What it means is, if this guy exposes a port 80, and there is an application that is listening on port 80, what does a port really mean, right? You have an IP address, and if an application wants to talk to only the IP address, there's only one application that can talk to the system. So what they did, and I'm oversimplifying this just to make things comprehensible, right? Easy for you to understand, is if I have a machine and that machine has an IP address, and if somebody wants to talk to the machine, if this guy, let's call it as application A, wants to talk to this through the IP address, there's only one application technically that could be presented or be running on this guy over here. So everybody will be talking to that same application, right? But that's not what we wanted. We wanted multiple applications to be running over here. So there came a concept of ports. Nginx is running on port 80, let's say. JBoss is running on port 8080. SSH is running on port 22 by default. So now what happened was, with port and IP address, we are able to say for this particular IP, I want to talk to the application that is on port 22. So now I get to talk to an application inside here. All the traffic coming on port 22 will go to that SSH client. I will stop here for a second just to ask you whether what I'm saying in the most simplified form making sense so far.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So now let's move forward a little bit. So what I want you to understand from here is a machine. First of all, a machine has a MAC address. Okay. I'm not going to talk a lot about MAC address because we have not reached that level of maturity to talk about MAC address as yet. But I'm just going to say it. I'm not going to write it because this keypad is like acting on me. So there's a MAC address. MAC address uniquely identifies a particular machine all over the world, uniquely. Okay, it's a GUI ID basically. Then you add a certain machines into a particular network and you add IP addresses for each of the machines so that they can talk to each other within that network. If you need to go out into a different network altogether within your same organization, what you need to do is you need to have a router which can talk to this subnetwork and a router that can talk to this subnetwork. So there's a router. So now each of your machines are able to go through a gateway. So that's called a gateway computer and go and talk to the other one. It's a similar behavior when you talk about something in the cloud. So you have a machine over here and you want to talk to that machine. You will be hopping on from several routers around the world. And we are not going into the networking concepts of it. That's why I'm keeping it pretty simplified. So to go from your machine to this machine, there is no direct path. First, you have to go to this router. From this router, it will resolve to this router. From this router, it will go to this router. Many a times people call this as hops. How many hops does it take to reach from one machine to another machine? Okay, but the only reason I talked about it is because I started talking about IP address, but that's not the whole context. We got to go back to our port. So I will remove all of this. So when you have a port 80 for this guy, and there's an application listening on port 80, there's no other application in the world that can sit inside here and say, I want to listen to port 80. It will say the port is already occupied. Okay, but coming over here, you see there are two containers running on port 80. What does that mean to you? That means they are not a single machine, they're multiple machines. Okay, and now our host, my laptop, is hosting those containers, of course, within a Docker engine, which is virtually invisible to us. We don't really talk about it. But now you have your browser sitting on your laptop. This is your browser. The browser, when you say localhost, it resolves the IP address to 127.0.0.1, which is localhost. So basically, when you go to the browser and enter localhost 80, you're basically talking to your machine. And what you're saying is, my machine has a port number called 8080, but we have no application what goes wrong with this. Okay, so there's no application that is listening on this port 8080. I will stop here for one more second. I'll ask you, up until here, are you understanding? We have two containers that are listening on port 80. This is also listening on port 80. This is also listening on port 80. Okay, but my machine knows nothing about that container as yet. Do you all agree to that?
Yes.
Now, when my browser wants to talk to somebody over here, what I need to do is I have to do a port mapping. I have to map and say 8080 will map to this, and probably I will have a 8081 on my host, because I told you, right, I cannot have two applications mapped to the same port. So I cannot map this guy also on 8080 and this guy also on 8080. I cannot do that. So if I want to expose the other one also, I will have to have a port and I'll have to map that port to this 80. Then you'll be able to go to localhost 8080, which will go here. And when you say localhost 8081, it will go here. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear.
Okay, good. So now really let's see it in action. At the moment, the way it's done, I cannot do curl HTTP localhost 8080. I cannot do that, right? I don't even know if EC2 allows us to do it, but let's figure that out right now. First of all, let's go ahead and destroy the two containers. What's the command to destroy the two containers?
Docker RM container ID.
Docker container RM. Will this work?
Container
First, we have to stop, right? Some
Yeah,
stop. Then
yeah.
run.
I will show you something. It will not run. There's a,
Yeah,
I think there's a F
Forceful.
command which will be forceful, right?
Yeah.
And or you will have to container stop and then do RM. So there's a command called Docker container stop. The reason I'm using container and images, although there are smaller shortcut commands, is just so that you're able to map it, that this is a container command, this is the image command, this is a volume command, so on and so forth. Okay. Don't take me otherwise that Samir is being stupid and he doesn't know the shortcuts. I do know the shortcuts. I'm intentionally using a longer form. All right, Docker PS, this is a short form, right? I mean, of Docker container ls. So both are same. So now we do not have any container running. Let's go back to the command where we did a run. And if let's do a port mapping of 8080 to 80. Okay. And let's see if this works. You see this? Works. If I go to the browser and use the public IP, if I use the public IP, and do 8080, did I put HTTP in front? Oh, my security group. So my container is able to talk. You remember I told you during that conversation that first you have to make sure that your container is able, your container it is running, we haven't seen yet. Okay, we didn't get inside the container to check it, but we've checked it from the host, it is accessible. But from the browser, it is not accessible. What that indicates is there's something to do with security group. Okay. So let's go to the security group and let's see if we have HTTP. See, 8081 is accessible. I will keep 8081 because we will need it. And I can technically do all, okay? There's an all TCP option available, but I'm intentionally opening only what I need. And I'm opening it up only to my IP, not to everybody else. And this also, I will open it only to my IP. I know we had opened it last time for everybody. And then I will go back over here and then run it. You see, it's working. So Saujanya, I think you're caught up in one of the spaces, but if not, there's another thing which was the primary thing we should have done.
I got it, that's resolved.
Okay, good. Docker PS. And what I want to do is, I want to do a Docker, this command we haven't seen, okay? Container help. There should be exec command. You see that? Docker, we don't even need to write container, okay? I mean, exec minus IT, the container ID. I think it is in bash.
to enter into the container.
Sorry. Yeah. So I'm attaching or I'm shelling into the container. So this is inside the container. So when I get inside the container, I could have done the same thing, curl http:/localhost, but this time it will not be 8080, right? Because we are inside the container. If I do 8080, it will not work. If I do 80, it works. Okay. And since it is 80, I don't even need to provide a port because that's default. See that? So this is what I was saying. First, check whether the container is able to serve you or not. So you get inside the container. Now I get outside the container, and then I check if the instance allows me to do it or not. And this is going to be 8080 because port is 8080 on the instance. It allows me. And once instance allows you, then you go to the browser and try if it allows it or not. If it does not allow it, most of the time in the default world, it's a security group. There can be other thing like routes and all not configured probably, but we haven't got there yet, so we will not talk about it. At least this 3 level of troubleshooting you should be able to do. All right, if you've understood this, let's go ahead and do the second one. Let's create another one. And this time I'll map 80 to 8081. I'll try curl http localhost 8081. It works. And since I've added the security group, the browser also should work. It does, right? Is it clear so far?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, let's get to the important aspects of it. I told you by default, when you do a Docker PS, it gives you a name, which is generated name. Many a times it's a good idea to give your own name. And the way you can do it is, let me first kill. Okay, let's play around with awk a little bit. Help me. I want to destroy all of this at the same time in a single command. Jyoti, can you tell me what's the command?
Yes. Docker rm dollar dollar within the brackets docker ps -a.
-aq, right?
AQ?
AQ, I guess.
Is that the command? Maybe you need a -f.
No, not
Yeah.
required. Minus.
Yeah, no, you need it. Without -s, a running container is not killing.
So yeah, they're running. So okay.
Yeah, that's nothing. All right, so both the containers are killed. Let's go ahead and recreate them. And this time we'll recreate them with
Names.
name. So I'll just do this.
Hyphen name.
Nginx1, Nginx. Because I've already, see, this is the error. I'm trying to map the host port to something that's already mapped. So it will tell you the port is already allocated. This was the error I was talking about. So let's go ahead and make it as 8081. Oh,
Those are 2 separate containers, right, Samir?
yeah, 2 separate container, but the host port was same, right? 8080.
Okay, host. Okay.
And the second error that I got was because the container with the same name was already existing in a stop state. So it would not allow me to create a new one. So if I do a docker ps -aq, what does it really give? Okay, good. It gives me. Yeah. So one is Nginx, one is Nginx2. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do a container inspect. So Docker container help again. There should be an inspect. Isn't there an inspect?
It's there, Samir.
Yes.
About killing.
Export.
Oh, here, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
here.
Shit, what's wrong with my eyes? Inspect Nginx 1. So if I look here, the IP address is 172. Is this for Nginx 1? Okay, and now let's go in and look at Nginx 2. I would want you to look at this command and go through this, okay, as an exercise. Just go through the whole thing and see what all things are there which are of interest for you from a container inspect perspective. But I'm just looking at the IP address. Just out of curiosity, I will try to check what's the IP address, 172.17.0.1. So I will try to ping from my machine, that is this host basically, to the IP address of Nginx 1. It connects, right? And now I'll go and ping the IP address of Nginx 2. It works. Okay. Now, out of curiosity, I want to get inside Nginx 1 and then ping Nginx 2. Okay. What's the Docker attach command?
So
Anybody
attach.
knows? Is there attach command? Yeah. So Docker container, have never used it. I usually use exec, but let's try this. Docker container attach and the container. So let's try that. Okay. Anybody used this before?
No, Samir.
Trying to see if it allows me to shell. It doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Was it waiting for me to write some commands? But anyway, I usually prefer to do exec, but another exercise you can add is find out what attach really does. I don't want to Google right now, but as part of the exercise, please check that. So what I will do is docker exec minus IT container ID, or I can say Nginx. Why Nginx 1? I killed Nginx 1 or what? Because I was already inside it. Docker ps minus a is basically gives me all of them. I want to kill Docker container rm nginx 1. I think I've killed it when I did a control C, right? I was already inside it. It was attached. That's why it went. But anyway, that's exercise for you. So I will not explore too much about it. What I want to do is I want to be able to create nginx 1. Docker container inspect 1. Yeah, it's 1. It's 2. So that's what we have, right? Yeah. So I will do Docker ps. I want to shell inside it, basically go to Nginx 1 and then ping Nginx 2. That's what I'm trying to do. Docker exec minus IT. Or you can even say Nginx 1. So I'm in there and I want to see whether I can ping Nginx 2 from here. So there's no ping command in this container because it's not necessary. The people who constructed this container would have put all the commands. So let's see if there's anything else. Let's see if there's an ns lookup. NS lookup also is not there. I will have to get a container that will allow me to use the networking commands. Okay, so what else? Tail. Let's see if tail is available. Looks like it is there. Tail minus F. Tail will not work actually. Tail will not allow me to check the IP address. Anyway, let's not do with Nginx. We'll get what's that?
Can we use curl command?
Curl will probably allow me to do that. Curl HTTP local, not localhost. Yep, it allows. Yeah, that's right. So you see, one container is able to talk to another container, but what I want to do is not this. This is not the reason I came in here. I'm in Nginx 1. I want to see if I can do using name. Could not resolve host. So for ability to be calling using name, we have to create a network and assign those containers within the same network. Okay. So what we will do is, let's, out of curiosity, let's say you are trying to do this and you figure this out, that's not able to do it. How to connect to Docker container using name. Let's say I'll just put this. How to reach Docker container by name instead of IP. As a built-in DNS, if your containers are connected to the same user-defined network, you see this word, right? User-defined network. Okay. So we will try this. I mean, personally, I never have to get to this level, but just so that you feel a little comfortable, I want to see if we can do this exercise. So what I will do is Docker PS and Docker RM -F $Docker A or AQ. Is that right?
AQ, Samir. ES space hyphen AQ.
Yeah, it stopped. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'll just be back. How many degrees apart? Hold on. We have 27 for 11. 27? Yeah. Got it. All right. So the context, what we are trying to do, is everybody clear about what we are trying to do now? Romana?
Yes, Satish.
Yes.
So we have two containers. We saw that two containers can talk to each other using IP address. We saw that host can talk to each of the container using IP address. But now what we are trying to do is we are trying to make each container talk to each other using their defined names. Okay, that's what we are trying to do. And what it is saying here is, it's saying you should create a network and then connect to that network while creating the containers. So we will do that. Docker network help. If you see Docker network help, there are a couple of commands over here. Let's execute the first command. Docker network ls. So if you see here, the default network is the breached network. This is where you get onto if you do not define your network while creating the containers. That's what we were on right now, where we got the IP address assigned. Okay. What we will do is we will try to create a new network. So we'll say Docker network create, and my, let's say Lotus ops net. So network is created. I will run Docker network ls. You see there is this guy over here. Docker ps, there's nothing. So let's bring the command. Okay, nginx1. And what I need to do is I have to give -- net and lotus ops -net. Okay. If I do a Docker container inspect nginx1, it should potentially show me which network I am on. If you see something, oh, you see this? I'm on Lotus Ops net. Okay. So now let's go ahead and do nginx2. Oh shoot, I did the same thing again. Docker rm nginx2. 8081 I should do. 8081. Okay. So now I have Docker inspect, container inspect or inspect nginx2. This is also on Lotus Ops net. Okay. What I will do now is Docker network inspect Lotus Ops net. I want to see who all are there on this network. So if you see here in containers, it says there's nginx2 and nginx1. Okay, I'll stop for a second just so that I'm not showing you a lot more command. Are you clear with what I'm trying to get to? We are only playing with containers and networks at the moment. We have created a network. We have assigned 2 containers to that same network. So that's what we are trying to see here. Is that clear?
Clear.
Clear.
Okay. Now, what I will do is I will exec into nginx1 and try to ping or curl to nginx2. Docker exec -it nginx1 /bin/bash. And then do a curl nginx2. Well, it's 80, so I don't have to do anything. See this? They're able to talk using the name of the container. So now assume for a moment we had 2 containers. One was having a database. Technically, nobody puts database in a container. Let's assume it's Redis cache or whatever. And your application needs to talk to a container that is having Redis cache. It is able to talk to it using the DNS name, not the IP address. What that means is if nginx2 goes down for whatever reason, and there's a new pod that comes up, whatever IP is assigned to it, but it starts with this DNS name, your application will still work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Now let's try to do something very funny. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do Docker network list and Docker network rm Lotus Ops. What do you think will happen?
This command removes the network.
It will not remove, I think.
It
Containers.
has
will
active
actually-
endpoints because there are containers that are running, correct?
Yes.
So Docker rm -f Docker ps -aq. Done. And now I'll try to remove the network. Done. Nice.
Can someone forcefully remove network, Samir?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I have never tried it, but please do
In
try.
that case, it should fall back to bridge network, right?
It will
Like if
not.
that-
It will not. I don't think so. It will. But let's see if there is something called any options. No, I don't think so. There is any forceful removal. But you can try it out. Let me know if it works. Okay. So far, are you guys clear?
Yes.
Okay. Let's move to the next one. Where was that? Yeah. So we saw this, okay? We saw why the name is required. Now we'll look at volume, okay? So what it is saying is you are trying to get the volume from user share nginx HTML, but we do not have any HTML page. So what I will first do is I will copy the content from here out to my current directory. So there should be a cp command somewhere, something like this. So I will do docker ps, there's nothing. Let's start a container. Okay. Okay, that network is not there, that's why. So I will remove this network just so that it launches on Docker RM engines. Okay, that started. Now I want to do is Docker cp nginx1 and then the path, whatever the path is. etc nginx, not this one, I want the HTML. User share. Which directory I'm in. So you see this HTML has come out now. I'll go inside the HTML and there should be an index.html page. I can try to do, and welcome to nginx 1. I'll just change this, okay? Now what I will do is I will copy the content from here to the container. So Docker cp from the local to HTML. Okay, now I will go and check the port 8080. Where is that one? Not sure. See this? I can change the content also if I have to, but are you watching what I'm doing? I didn't use a volume map at the moment, but I will explain you. If you understood what I did, I'm not going to explain you here, but if you didn't, I can explain you quickly. Did you understand what I did?
Yes.
Got
So
it.
you don't need explanation, right? I created a container. Inside a container, there is a path. Is this user share nginx HTML. The first command that I ran was I said copy the content from this HTML on my current directory, which brought the HTML directory in my machine. So that's the first command. So I brought from here out to my machine. I modified this and then I said copy this over here. Okay, so that's how my running container, I was able to go and see that my change reflects. Okay, and if you notice here, that's the first thing. Okay, that's the first thing in trying to understand what volume maps are. Now you don't want to copy from the container out to your local, from the local out to the container. You want to create this volume mapping while the container is running. That's exactly the second thing which we are going to do. So I will go docker ps docker rm -f. And now when I go back here, I'm going to do -v and I will copy from here. Not this.
Down, sir. The third line. Oh, okay, you're there. You're there.
Oh, PWD probably. Don't know if it doesn't take. Invalid reference format.
What is that arrow after colon? HTML arrow.
Basically. Let's remove that and see what happens. No, even then it doesn't allow me. Oh, my bad. I put it in between here. The name should be Okay, so now it got created. I can go to the browser and check if that worked here. So let me close this guy and see if that one shows up. Forbidden. Oh,
Is
which
that the
port?
right one?
Port 8080. Yeah, that's the right one. Did I mess up? I think I messed up. Let me see. Docker exec minus IT nginx1/bin/bash cd user share HTML. Yeah, see, I messed it. So it didn't. I think this path is not right. Echo ECHO $pwd. Is it dollar curly braces or? Yeah, it is correct. I don't want the content of. I want the content of HTML to be moved in. So basically, when it was doing this, it.
Can you try the direct path
Oh,
instead of?
wait. No. I know what's happening. I'm already sitting.
You are
in
already in the
HTML. Yeah,
HTML.
HTML. That's why. So let's do this. Docker ps docker rm minus f nginx1. So I was, you know what was happening, right? I was already inside HTML. So inside HTML, it was trying to go and find that folder. It was not there. Now, should be good. Hopefully. If not, we'll figure out. Yeah. See this nginx1. Clear so far? Step number
Arrow
2.
is read only.
Arrow is read only. Yes.
Read only volume.
Yeah. I think that's the default. You don't even have to specify that if I'm not wrong. Let's. So you saw copy, you saw volume mount. Now let's do one more thing. Okay. What we will do is.
Samir, can we give the copy command in Docker file?
Yeah, that's the last thing that we're going to do now. We're going to do all of this with the Docker file now. So first we saw you can do a copy from host to running container. We saw that we can create a volume mount by mounting what is on our host into the container using volume mount. And the last one that we're going to see is using a Docker file. Okay, so I will create a Docker file from nginx. Yeah.
One quick question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we find the logs anywhere while running Docker run command? If it is not working out, can we find the logs in the backend?
We can. Yes. Yeah, we'll look at that.
Yeah. Okay.
After this, we'll look at that. Okay. Docker. So copy. You want to copy HTML to user share. What was that path? You know what? I'll just copy that. Let's see if this works. If not, we'll. Docker image build or build whatever you want can do. -t my nginx 0. Let's see if this works. So it says it copied, and now I'll do a Docker ps docker rm minus f Docker image ls, and then I'll create a container from my nginx. And I don't need to do volume mount. Okay, I'm going to remove volume mount. So Let's go here, copy this. Works? You with me?
Yes, Samir. Yes.
Okay. Now, let's look at this darker volume, like we saw, right? We saw a Docker network, and now we are looking at Docker volume. Docker volume also has a create command. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I'll see a Docker volume. This is the fourth way of doing it now. Okay, the volume create my nginx. I'll just call it as Lotus Ops volume. Okay, and then I will do a Docker volume inspect. Lotus Ops volume. So you see, this is the path. Okay, I will try and see if I can list that path. Cannot access volume. So I will do a sudo. It is able to list, right? So what I will do is I will copy that HTML from my local over here to this data directory. Okay. This is not a good way to do it. Usually we create a volume, and the reason we create a volume is, okay, let me show it pictorially. So we have a container. Up until now, for the three use cases, what we wanted to do, we wanted to copy something from our host to the container, correct? Correct? Do you guys agree with me? Whenever we did Docker copy, or we did a volume mount, or we create a Docker file, the whole intent was what? Copy something from here to here, correct? But in many cases, we would have the container producing a byproduct. For example, if we run a Maven command inside it, your Maven command is going to create .m2 repository folders, right? If it is creating inside this container, as soon as this container dies, that all data that it had pulled is lost. Every time you run, every time it will have to pull from the remote. In such a case, what we do is we create a volume. And we say mount the volume so that if any change happens over here, it is mounted over here. That same thing, this is the primary principle. I mean, the whole reason I was doing this and I came back is because the whole principle of volume is that. But now I'm trying to do something else, which is theoretically okay to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm copying this HTML into this location, okay? And then I will mount this in the running container. So I will take this. What I want to do basically is I want to go inside HTML and make some changes. And I want to put right. So I have made that change. I want to go back and I want to do sudo copy minus, what is the command to copy recurring? What's the command to copy recurring HTML to? Yeah, so HTML is there, right? file also is there. Okay. And if you want to cat the index file, so my change is there. Okay. In that, so I'm going to stop this one first, Docker rm -f. Stopped, correct? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that command which was having the volume mount. This one. What I'm going to do is instead of my local, I'm going to say see Lotus Ops volume. Invalid character for a volume name. Docker volume list. Lotus Ops volume. It doesn't like hyphen.
I think no need to use HTML after Lotus Ops volume.
No, I don't think so. It's because of that. Yeah, I think it's because of the hyphen in the name. No? Why would it, how would it basically map that HTML then? What if I want to take a specific path within that? How do we do that? Okay, I will come to that question. But if you think this will run, let's try it. No, it has not. So basically what I want to do is I want to copy from that volume, I want to copy HTML. Will it not allow me to do that?
I think we have to give path from inspect, which we find in inspect.
Yeah, I would not want to do that because I have a volume. Yeah, I know, I knew I might face a challenge. That's the reason why I told you that I've always used it to write from a container to the volume where we use the volume name directly. But let's Google a bit because we've come here. Mount content of Docker.
Did you define it as a read-only volume?
Pretty matter.
During the run command?
No, it is. If I don't use that /HTML, it is working. So what Saujanya said, right? Docker volume inspect, and if I get inside, what was that? Lotus Ops hyphen volume. If I give this path, it will potentially work. But I don't know whether it's the permissioning issue. I don't know. We'll check it out. So if I get here, first of all, I'll have to stop basically. See, this is what Saujanya said, and I don't disagree with it, but I don't want to use that long name. See that? I don't want to use this long name. The whole reason I'm creating a volume is so that I can use that volume name, right? So that I can, in future, if I want to change this volume and put something else, I should be able to just do it using the volume. I don't need to use the long path. That's exactly what I'm trying to Google for. It's creating a volume inspector after volume mounting Docker volume. I wouldn't be surprised they will say mount the point. Yeah, you see this? Geek for geek. So I think it doesn't allow us to map a specific path That's what I'm thinking. If I would put the content of HTML directly over here, I can map it. And I would not deny the fact that that is probably a limitation. So what I'm trying to get to is, if I do a Docker PS, I'll stop there, Docker rm -f d1. And if I go back to a Docker volume ls and then do a Docker volume inspect, and if I sudo mv /html2, I want to copy the content of HTML star to data, and directory called HTML. It doesn't allow me to use regular expression. Why would it not allow me? No. Do you know what's the command if I want to move everything under HTML to a different folder? Anybody knows?
Now can you use that R flag after removing the regular expression?
Like that?
With R flag, recursive flag.
Sorry, what was that?
Um,
No, there's
can you-
nothing called -R for move. There's nothing called -R for move.
CP command, CP-P.
Yeah, copy I don't want to do. I want to actually move. I want to move those files. Anyway, just for the sake of it, I will. There are only 3 files, right? So I will move phi0x.html. There should be a way to move everything. I mean, I remember doing it. Wait, this HTML is a redundant. Okay, let's see if I start now.
Okay, these are some of the words where this part is multiplied, like
So you know what I've done, right? I've moved the content of HTML under router sop, and I'm mounting this volume along with the content basically under HTML. That's what I'm trying to do. And now, yep, that worked. So yeah, I think that's probably a limitation of feature, whatever you call it. You cannot really create multiple paths inside a volume and then map the individual path to a particular directory. You can map the whole volume out to that directory. Does that make sense to you? It makes sense to me now.
Yes, Samir.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but trust me, this condition of creating a volume, putting everything will be beneficial when you're letting Docker manage your volumes completely, right? More often than not, when you want to really copy something from your host to the container, you do it using Docker file. Okay, there will be some instances where your Docker instance is already created, but your static content is created separately, and then you want to mount it. You will have a rsync or a copy command. In FIS, they do rsync of static content, if you see that, Jyoti, right? This volume would only be used when you want to write something. Your container basically produces something. For example, okay, I will get inside the container now, and I will do a docker exec -it paste /bin/bash. And I'll do a user share nginx HTML, and I'll create a file over here called I cannot touch because we created it as a arrow. It is not letting me do anything over here. And I can't even do sudo over here because it's within the container. So that's not possible. Okay. So it doesn't let me touch any file, read-only file system. So this answers your question about what arrow is, Romana. Okay, but if that arrow was not there, and if this was a directory where content gets created dynamically, like for example in M2 repository, which we will eventually see, you notice that if everything that gets loaded onto this directory will automatically get mapped to this volume and it's available over there. Okay, so that way it becomes very easy for you to create those volumes and Docker volume out. If you see what else is there. So this inspect ls prune, you can prune all those volumes and you can remove the volumes, remove a specific volume. Okay. Prune is basically a housekeeping command which removes all the volume that are unused.
Samir, just while we are on this topic, right? Last time we could not prune the images. You remember?
Yeah,
And
yeah. What?
Yeah, did a little bit of reading on that, and it says that prune removes dangling images.
Dangling
So
is basically unused images, right?
No, untagged or no name.
Okay.
So that's why we had names and tags for all of our images, and that's why that
Okay.
did not work. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you get untagged images when you create an image with the exact same name which is already existing. It untags the older image and then puts this new image in there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I will probably take questions now if you have any. So far, I think we have done quite a lot. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Yes, Samir. Yeah, what was the difference between mounting and bind mounting?
Mounting and bind mounting.
Yeah.
Did you read about it?
Yeah, I heard somewhere the bind mounting.
Yeah. So there is this thing called -mount and -v. Technically, they do the same thing, but with -mount, -mount, you are able to give more verbose commands. So if you want to check here, docker bind mount. If I go down here, if you see this -mount, you are able to specify each and everything. For example, type is bind, source is pwd target, target is app. In our -v command, we are saying the same thing, but we are going by convention. We are saying left side is source. There's a colon that separates the left and right, and the right side is target. And the type is bind. Type is not bind for sure. Okay. So I would suggest, so here are the differences basically in terms of usage. So if you want to read this and then tell me, I'll be glad.
But functionality wise, it's the same. It does the same both.
There's a little bit of a functionality difference in it, but in terms of what you achieve is exactly the same. Okay, so there's a technical differences. Like for example, you asked me about Linux and Linux 2, right, in Amazon. Romana.
Yes.
Technically, there's a difference, but functionally, there is no difference. It's all end of life thing. I think I had sent you a link for it. What support does it have?
Yep.
Yeah. So was that Jyoti or Mansa who asked it?
Mansa, Samir. It's me.
Do you know what is the difference?
Exactly, I didn't understand. That's why I'm asking.
Hold on, we'll read it. Docker logs nginx 1. Somebody had asked about logs, so I wanted to even show this.
Yeah, it's me only. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the way you would get to logs for a specific container, or you can give even the container ID.
Yeah, it's for the specific container, right, Samir?
Yeah.
I'm asking like while creating the container, if we run the run command, but it's not attaching.
Yeah, so there is a journal control command basically, which allows you to search for a specific instance. So this is everything basically that journal control is giving you right now. So if you see, this is not only the container, it is everything. So if you want to look for a container, this is more of an advanced command. When we get to Kubernetes, we will definitely look at this. But if you really want to know if the container is stopping, if there's some problem, how do I look for it? Just research a little bit of journal control, even if you want to do it before I reach there. Okay. So the command is journal control CTL. And for bind, mount, and mount, this is what it is. If you, even after reading, if you didn't understand, then I will also have to read. So let's read a bit. So bind mounts have been around since early days of Docker. Bind mounts have limited functionality compared to volumes. So this statement itself will tell me, don't go for bind mounts, okay? When you use a bind mount, a file or a directory on the host machine is mounted into a container. The file or directory is referenced by its absolute path on the host machine. By contrast, when you use a volume, a new directory is created within Docker storage directory on the host machine, and Docker manages that directory content. So this is similar to what I did with volume. Remember, I created a volume and then I used that volume to mount inside. I didn't do a direct host mapping. You remember that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're saying doing that is better because you're creating a Docker volume and then mounting a Docker volume. File or directory does not need to exist on Docker host already. If it is created on demand, if it does not yet exist. Bind mounts are very performant, but they rely on host machine's file system having a specific directory structure. If you are developing new Docker application, consider using named volumes, what we did, instead. Okay, do not use /abc : whatever is the containers inside. The second part that we had seen, right? Mounting -vn. It's saying don't do that. Instead, use named volumes. That's the best practice, is what it's trying to say. Don't use bind mounting. Okay, which makes sense. And I think I have already shown you that. So now if you read it, you should be able to compare those two differences, whether you're using a named volume or using a bind mount. Does that make sense? Maybe you didn't know about this earlier, so you read through and you didn't understand. So I will give you an opportunity to just read through it and let me also know if there's anything that is not clear. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. What else? Anybody else has any questions? I had given that Brad Fisher's course. Did you get it like any cheaper? Like, is it cheap or is it still expensive?
I have it, Samir. I had it, I think, but I never went through it. So I don't know.
Okay, are you going through it now?
Yes.
Okay, so far are you liking it?
Yeah, I just read about volumes. That's it. I haven't started from beginning.
Yeah, start from beginning, Rumana. I mean, when you're starting from fresh, right? That's one thing that you get to do, is you get to read the book page to page, cover to cover, right? And that gives you more knowledge than anybody else, because most of the time when we know things, we assume we know it and we never go through page to page. I personally never go through page to page. If I have a problem, I'll go to that problem, I'll look for that problem, read about it, and then I'm done. Right? But since all of you are educating yourself on this, see whether you can do it page to page, cover to cover.
Sure.
Yeah. Anybody else bought that Brad Fisher's course? No.
Not
Anybody?
the Brad Fisher. I bought something else already long back.
Who is that? Who's the author? Is it good?
I forgot the author. Have to see.
Okay, but is he good? Have you
Yeah,
learned everything?
he's good. Yeah.
Okay. So everything
Yeah, I
that we've
liked it.
talked so far, were you already aware about that, Saujanya?
Not really. A few, few I already know. Few are new things for me.
Jyoti, did you buy anything for Docker? Mansa, did you buy anything for Docker?
Not at Samir.
Okay. Jyoti has left us, so Jyoti is still there.
Yes, I didn't purchase.
Okay. You don't necessarily have to purchase. You can either go through, I think even YouTube, Nana should have something. What I want is I want you to come ask questions. This one year ago, not this one, Docker tutorial for beginners. There's the whole playlist. You can even look for this. There's a whole playlist. Primarily, what you need for you to work, okay, is what we've pretty much covered. We will look a lot more with Docker. Like I don't have intentions of teaching Docker Compose and Docker Swarm, because most of the time, if you need it, it's very, very simple to know. Okay, Docker Swarm you'll never use because you'll mostly use Kubernetes. So let's talk a bit about that. So now we saw there are containers, right? We saw there's a networking between those containers, and those containers can talk to each other if need be, right? They can talk to however they want to talk. Okay. Now, these containers are isolated. If somebody comes and kills this, there is nobody sitting over here. There's nobody sitting over here trying to see whether it is up, and then if it goes down, bring it up. There is nobody over here which says the customer has said, I need 3 instances of this container. If one of them goes down, I have to bring the third one up. So if all 3 goes down, I have to bring all the 3 up. So this guy sitting over here, you can look at him as a container manager. Okay, that is what Kubernetes is supposed to be doing. There's a little more, but primarily it is a container manager. It makes sure that containers are healthy. If a container is not healthy, it has to be killed. It makes sure that the containers are placed properly onto nodes. It makes sure that if the node goes down, those containers are moved from that particular node and brought onto other alive nodes. So that is what a container manager is supposed to do. That is what Swarm does, which is given to you by Docker out of the box. And that is what Kubernetes does. That is what OpenShift does. Okay, there'll be nitty-gritties to it. What more does it do? Okay, so don't quote me on this that Samir said it does only this. It only allows you to do replicas. It only checks whether the health of the containers are healthy or not. No, that's not the only thing it does. When you come to Kubernetes, it does much more. Okay, but this is primarily what it is. It's a container manager. Okay, when it comes to Docker Compose, so Docker Compose, I will give it to you as an assignment today. Okay, out of all the assignments that I said, take Docker Compose as an assignment for you. What I want you to do is, so right now you saw, right, we created Nginx 1. We created Nginx 2, right? What if every time I had to go in and run those commands, what if you want to write a simple playbook? When you run that playbook, Nginx 1 and Nginx 2, I mean, Nginx 1 and Nginx 2 is a bad example here, but Nginx might be a server. You might have something else running, your application running inside JBoss, and Nginx is just a front controller. It accepts the traffic and moves the data to either your JBoss or your Tomcat. So you have three systems. You have JBoss, where your services are running. You have Tomcat, where your UI is running. And then you have Nginx, which is acting as a reverse proxy. And we've talked about what a reverse proxy is. Load is coming from outside the organization. It takes all the load. And then based on the context mapping, it will either forward here or forward here. Okay. Or you can even think of it as you have what is that? Redis for caching. So when you need caching, let's say the service makes a call to reverse proxy, and the reverse proxy makes a call to caching and forwards it to the right caching system in the cluster. So if you have such a playbook and you don't want to go and start this container and this container and this container and this container, then make them participate and go onto the same network, pass the environment variables. Environment variables is something that we haven't seen yet. We will take a look at it in a moment. Okay. So to be able to do this in one single command, it allows you to write a playbook, which is basically Docker Compose. And then once you've created that playbook or the Docker Compose or YAML file, you are able to just run Docker Compose up, Docker-compose. So by default, if I run Docker Compose here, see what will happen. It will not even, see, Docker Compose is not there. So Docker Compose is a separate installation that you have to do. So if you Google for install Docker Compose.
VIM Docker Compose, right? Command.
What is that? What is that?
VIM Docker Compose.
VIM.
Yeah, Docker Compose.
No, that is to create a Docker Compose or YAML file. So VI is a command to create a file. But like how we have Docker, we don't have Docker Compose over here. Okay. So
Okay.
if you Google to install Docker Compose, it should give you it should tell you what you need to do. This is the command here. Okay, so let's see. I have to make it executable. Yeah, that's the Docker Compose. So in Docker Compose, there's a command called up and there's a command called down. So if you create a Docker Compose.yaml file, which is your assignment, if you say Docker Compose up, it will go ahead and create all the services which are there in your YAML file, all the containers, and those containers will be available for you to start working. So this helps a lot for developers when they're testing something locally. So can you take this up, Docker Compose as a, and it's very, very easy, okay? I'm not skipping it. It's a very easy file. There's hardly anything. So you can just take this as an example. So you have a version, you have services, and this is where it all starts. So there are two services what he has. He has a web service and a Redis service. So you can give whatever. You can call Samir and you can call this as Sojourner. And inside here, what you're saying is, I have a Docker file that needs to be built. So that's why you put a build command. You're saying build what is there at this current location. Okay, if you have it in a different path, you can give a different path. So that means it will build the Docker image and then deploy or install or run the Docker container. Okay, you're saying port mapping, which port has to be mapped? The port 5000 has to be mapped to port 8000 of the host. What volumes do you need? Your current directory, you want to map it to code. Your log volume 01, which is a volume which is created over here. If you see Docker volume create, we used to do, right? Saying map this to where log. That means whatever logs are created, I want it to be mounted to log volume. Then what I'm saying is I want to link to Redis. That means since this link is there, this is smart enough that it will first create this Redis container. Once the Redis container is created, it will link to that Redis container. So you can just read through it. All of this native thing, what you need, we have seen except for environment variables. We haven't seen environment variables yet, but everything else that you really need, you have seen it. Okay. So if you go through either this or just YouTube, installing Compose, getting started with Compose, I would not suggest you to go through all of this over here because this is Python, looks like. Yeah, it's a Python code. If you want, play around with Python code, but I don't want you to deviate from the core of DevOps as yet. Okay, we can look at Python and all that eventually, but for now, let's not deviate. Okay, but if you're finding this interesting, please go through it. It is an interesting topic, but in my whole career of Docker, I never had to write a Docker Compose file. I mean, I have used Docker Compose files which people have written just for fun, but in production, nobody uses Docker Compose file, and that's the reason why I'm skipping it. But for fun, you might want to just go through it. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and Docker Swarm, don't even look at it because we will look at Kubernetes. So Docker Swarm is not interesting for you. But those last time I had given you about Docker file, good practices and best practices for writing Docker file. There are 2 links which I had sent you. Those are the important links if you have to learn Docker very well. Okay. So what's your assignment? Do you want me to write it in? I'll write it in WhatsApp. Give me a second. Learn about. Okay, that's the assignment. What else did I say you have to do as an assignment? Was that I remember we said there's something more, right? What else?
How the containers talk to each other. Attach command.
Yeah. Check how to use Docker attach command. Okay. Yeah, I mean that volume mount and bind mount, if you want, you can read it, but I think it's pretty clear. You're going to be using volume mount, not bind mount. So you don't use absolute paths while binding. That's the older style of doing it. You use named volumes. Yeah.
You can stop recording, I think so.
Yeah.
Journal control.